Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this September the 13th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Due to the Safer at Home order, all committee members are participating virtually. For virtual meetings, committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. When there is a vote, it's going to be necessary to take a roll call vote. The committee member will be recognized. They'll raise their hand and they'll state their vote. I'd like to recognize the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Larson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Mundy.
Present.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present. This is the time of the Public Safety Committee agenda that we always like to take a moment, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the committee, to thank the brave men and women of the police, the fire, and the emergency management departments for the work that you do to keep our community safe. We couldn't do it without you. We honor you, and we'd like to do it at this particular time. And members of the committee, is there anyone who has any words on the subject? I want to make sure that you're able to be heard. We've got a pretty short agenda today.
I would also like to say thank you. We really value, respect, and appreciate all that you do. So thank you. Never miss an opportunity.
Hear, hear. All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Members of the committee and council, you know this, but members of the public, items on the consent agenda are typically approved with one sweeping motion unless a member of the council or committee wishes an item to be pulled for further consideration. Members of the committee or council, are there any items that should be pulled on the consent agenda at this particular time? If there are none, we'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And it's been properly seconded. We turn it over to the city clerk to call the roll for the item, please.
Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes. So the consent agenda is approved unanimously. That will take us to, we have two items on the general agenda. That take us to item G1, please. Madam Clerk, if you call the item.
Item G1, information on ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the City Code entitled Fire Prevention and Protection Open Burning Ordinance.
I'd like to recognize Assistant City Manager Patrice Tony.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair Taylor and members of the Public Safety Committee. I would like to, if you would acknowledge that, Chair Taylor, Fire Marshal and Assistant Chief Tad Bynum, he is actually going to review the first two items, G1 and G2, in reference to these ordinances. He has worked with public safety attorneys Lori Sykes and Pritchton Green. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to him.
Thank you, ma'am. Assistant Chief Byram, you have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor and committee members, Councilmember Larson, Councilmember Burke, Councilmember Mundy, and also Councilmember Scipio. I have tried to start my video and I'm not having much luck with it. So the first item is the open burning ordinance. And basically what we are proposing is that we clarify the wording in this ordinance. The original ordinance was written back in the 70s and it didn't really take into account, let's try that. That's better.
Here you go.
So the original ordinance didn't take into account like recreational burning that we have today with people using fire pits and chimeneas and so forth. So basically all this does is just clarify what we feel is safe, what we deemed as, recreational fires. So right now I'll entertain any questions that you may have on this.
Any questions for Chief Byram? Well, Chief Byram, if somebody wanted to use a fire pit, for example, what would be the process they need to go through in order to do that?
If they're commercially obtained or if they were constructed professionally, that would be fine. But most certainly, they can always contact the fire department, and we'll be glad to send somebody to take a look at what they are using, and of course, give safety tips while we're there as well. And that's one of the things that we have right now that's not clear in the current ordinance, is it doesn't really take into account that type of thing.
And Chief Byram, if I'm correct, and if the legal staff could help me out, this is coming to the committee for just general discussion and conversation. If the committee approves, if this seems copacetic to say the least, you will then come back for a change in the ordinance sometime in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman Taylor.
Any questions for Assistant Chief Byram on item G1? Councilman Mundy.
Just for clarification, I'm looking through the ordinance. We're still going to see more on this before it comes to a vote. Is that correct? Because I'm just not seeing enough in the materials that we were provided to make a sound decision and even understand what these changes are.
That's correct, Councilmember Mundy. We were wanting to bring this to your attention so that we can go ahead and let you start looking over this, and that way we could handle any questions, make any modifications that would be necessary before bringing it for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Larson. Councilman Larson, you may be muted, sir. Going one more time, Councilman Larson. All right, while he works through his technical difficulties, is there anyone else who wishes to be heard for item G1?
I think we got it, Chairman.
Councilman Larson.
It's my apologies to the committee. I'm curious about looking at a couple of matters. One deals with the materials that are eligible for being burned and when they can be burned, for example, in fire pits, whether they don't turn into trash barrel burnings and stuff like that. Use of wood versus charcoal, clearing of the area, flammable areas around the fire pits. Natural things to sort of learn in scouts about how to protect an area if you're going to have an outdoor fire pit. Use of screens, spark arresters, requirements to use those on outdoor burnings. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea to go ahead and have that. It's that time of year when people are beginning to think about having outdoor fires in the fall, outdoor cookouts, for example. We have children that are doing outdoor teepees and building little fires as part of their campsite. I think anything we can do to help provide some basic framework guidance is going to be welcome. So thank you for doing this, and I look forward to seeing a more complete document.
All right, there's no, Chief Byram, did I interrupt you, sir?
No, Mr. Taylor, I was just going to state that we appreciate the feedback, and we'd be glad to add other things in if needed, and we will have a FAQ on the fire department website to assist the citizens as well.
Thank you. If there is no additional commentary on this item, again, this is just for general understanding and conversation. If some questions should arise, just go ahead and send it over to staff. We'll try to get the proposed ordinance worked up before it comes back to the Public Safety Committee for consideration. So that concludes item G1. We will now move to the last item on the agenda. Item G2, please, Madam Clerk, if you call the item.
Item G2, information on ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the City Code entitled Fire Prevention and Protection, Combustible Landscape Ordinance.
Assistant City Manager Tony.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Assistant Chief Bynum will review this item as well.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, ACM Tony. This would be a new ordinance that we are requesting. Other cities in North Carolina have already enacted such ordinances about combustible landscaping. Again, this is informational purposes. Right now, we will come back with you for approval. The main thing that this would limit would be pine straw when you look at combustible landscaping. And there are other alternatives. I do want to make clear that we have worked with the apartment management community on this. They are also on board with this and have offered their support as well with the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association. And we have also worked in conjunction with Forsyth County and Kernersville on this same ordinance. But the wording in it is very similar to what was enacted in Raleigh back in 2010. They had a fire that just about destroyed a neighborhood that was involving combustible landscaping. Earlier this year in January, we had an apartment fire that was due to this as well. And also, we're asking that once this is enacted, that there be a 1-year grace period for the apartment community to go ahead and change out their landscaping as well. At this time, are there any questions?
Questions for Assistant Chief Byron? Councilman Mundy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you come back to the council or to the committee, could you include information on how this would be enforced, if it's going to be reported by citizens or if there are any kinds of inspections? You just want to know. I think the provision is fine, but how do we make sure that it is that people follow these guidelines?
If I may, to answer that question, that would be part of the fire inspection process when our personnel do the compliance inspections, and that would be written as a code violation, and they would be given 30 days to correct. Also, if a citizen were to complain, that would be another avenue for enforcement.
Is that an annual inspection?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, members of the committee, as you know, Fire Prevention Week, I believe, begins on October the 3rd. These particular items just sort of keep us safe as a city when it comes to prevention and protection of fires. We have had some in the past, and we want to do what we can to keep our citizens safe on all angles. So are there any additional questions before we move to close for Assistant Chief Byron regarding these fire protection items? Seeing nothing further, I like short meetings. Is there any other business that should be conducted or discussed for the good of the order? Seeing none further, we consider this Public Safety Committee meeting to be adjourned. Thank you all for your time.